Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Welcome to this segment of Khoj Gurbani's a-sabad-a-day. The sabad we recite today is in Rag Sorat, authored by the third Nanak, Gur Amar Das. So we are transitioning from the first Nanak to the third Nanak, Gur Amar Das. It is composed in Karpela, the first beat, and is a tituki, meaning three lines to a verse. And the theme continues on the subject of the previous shabads, contrasting a gurmukh and a manmukh in this particular sabad, two mentalities of the mind. And it centers on the assurance that the divine presence is ever protective. The recitation. Sorat mahalla tija, ghar pehla tituki, ik oankar satgur prasad. Ik oankar satgur prasad, oneness realized through the enlightener. The first stanza. Bhagata Di Sada tu Rakhada har jiyo, tur tu Rakhada aaya. Prahlad jan tud rakh laye har jiyo, har nak samar pachaya. Gurmukhano partit hai har jiyo, manmukh param pulaya. O beloved herself, this is a address to that wholeness within, the divine within, if you will, reaching out. And it says, the honor of your devotees. Bhagata Di Sada tu Rakhada aaya. You have always protected, preserved the dignity of your devotees. From the beginning, Turton, you have been their guardian, Rakhada aaya. So when we talk about the honor, badge, Rakhada aaya, one must understand that in the Gurmat model, there is a compact, a covenant, if you will, between the devotee who surrenders to the self and the self who always honors that surrender. That's the idea. That's what the third guru is saying. Bhagata Di Sada Rakhada aaya. So this is an assurance. Your servant, and then he gives us an illustration. Your servant Prahlad Jan, was saved by you. Tud rakh le, Haranakish mar pachaya. Haranakish was the father of Prahlad. So the story of Prahlad is a mythical figure, was a follower of the Lord Vishnu. Now this is Hindu mythology that is being used to make a point. He was born to Hiranyakashipu, who was supposed to be a demon king who had a boon and had become virtually indestructible and demanded that everyone worship him alone as God, which Prahlad resisted because he was unwavering in his devotion to Vishnu, Har. And so Prahlad was subjected to numerous tortures, including being thrown off from a cliff, being trampled by elephants, and trying to poison him. But evidently his faith was so strong that he remained unharmed. That's the legend. So in the Rahau, the Guru says, this exactly is your quality, O Divine One. What is it? Harji, eh teri vadiyai. This is your innate nature. What is it? Bhagta ki paj rakh tu Swami. You are the master who always honors the compact that a devotee makes with you. We talked about that. Bhagta ki paj rakh tu Swami, Bhagat tere sarnai, teri sarnai. So when the devotee seeks sanctuary, the self will always respond. That's the assurance to us. Bhakta no jam johen sake, kal na nede jai. Bhakta, divine lovers, devotees, those filled with devotional love, are not touched by the messenger of death. Bhakta no jam johen sake, kal na nede jai. So kal and jam are related, if not synonymous terms, where kal means the knot of time. A unit, and jam is a unit of time, but points to that aspect of time or death, they used synonymously, which weighs on the scale of judgment your actions. So what is being said here is that the devotee, the one who has surrendered its ego, is free from that accounting. There is no accounting because the ego is lost, it is gone. It is not the ego that is acting, but you are now acting through wisdom. Keval Ram Nam Manavasya, because only the wisdom of the all-pervasive Ram now comes to abide in the mind of the Bhagats, the divine lovers. That is why they have no accounting to give. And death and time are associated with this sense of accounting. But the Bhagats free themselves from this illusion. Naam hi mukta paye. Riddh siddh sab bhagta charni. So you see, this is pointing to the practice within the Indian system where yogis and siddhas and naths and so on, many sects, were trying to establish personal power. But what the Guru is saying is that you do not have to exert or cause your body to endure difficult practices for those powers. They come naturally when you live in wisdom. Riddh siddh sab bhakta charani. They actually come and abide at your feet. In other words, they are your slaves. Gur ke sahaj subhai. They come naturally when you are embedded in Gur wisdom. So Kala is, in Indian systems, the god of death and time, and is stationed in a place called Kala Atita, beyond time. So when the wheel of time runs its cycle, beyond the ken of time is where this judgment apparently takes place. But I say this just to give you a little backdrop. This doesn't mean that this is part of, because the gurus were addressing audiences that were steeped in this kind of mythology, this kind of belief systems. So it is believed that time, death, assumes the form of dharma in our present age. So it is represented by falsity, untidiness, violence, ruthlessness, ego. It becomes the ego. And we need the Guru to give us discernment to escape it. That's the idea. But manmukhano partitna avai antar lobh swav. But the ego is overcome with falsity, with untidiness, with violence, with ruthlessness, greed. That is why this is the I-minded person, lacks this discernment, because the fire of greed blocks the Guru's word. The Guru's word fails to pierce their heart. Gurmukh hirde a-sabad-a-day. And love of wisdom has not awakened in them. Har naam na laga pao. So, living in this falsehood and hypocrisy, the I-minded, the ego-minded lose their dignity. Kood kapat paj leh jasi. So that compact that we were talking about doesn't hold true for them because there is no compact. They haven't made that compact and live a life that is fickle. Manmukh phika alao. And now he contrasts it with the life of a divine lover. Bhagata vich aap varata prabji bhagti hu jata. Within the devotee, that wisdom comes to dwell. And it is only through devotion that the self is known. Maya moh sab lok hai teri, tu eko purkh bidata. It is true that the world is ensnared in Maya, yet it is yours. This is the empathy that the Gurus have for creation. Yes, we are caught, ensnared, but the Guru is sympathetic and he advises us. How may mar mansa mane samani gur ke sabad pachata. Conquer the ego, conquer the desire, hopes, and recognize the Guru's word. That is the advice being given to us, those who are caught in the ego. And then you will realize achint kam kare prab tinke, that the self will accomplish unimagined tasks for you. Jin har ka naam pyara. If only love of wisdom awakens in you. Gur prasadi sada manavasya sabbe kaj savaranhara. It is the arranger of all your affairs, provided you connect with it through the insight of the Guru. Guru prasadi sada manavasya. Now, ona ki rees kare so viguccha. But, and then this is addressing the envious mind, the ego. If you're envious of divine lovers, then you will stumble. Onna ki rees kare. If you are envious, if you try and pretend to be like them, you will stumble. So you have to have trust. You have to develop trust. Bin Satguru Seve Kenena Paya Manamukha Paunka Moe Bilalai. Again, addressing the I-centered mind, which is constantly, it sounds like a barking dog. Bin Satgur, without serving the true enlightener, which is the principle of enlightenment within you, none have attained this status. Without the true Guru, we sound like barking dogs. Ave, jave, thaur na pave. They come and they go, and they find no rest. Suffering upon suffering. This is what the contrast is being drawn. The Gurmukh, on the other hand, is drinking of the nectar of immortality, bliss. So life without Guru guidance is restless, it's cyclical, it's painful, likened to a dog that barks without a purpose. Bin Satgur Seva Janam na chode je anek karam kare adhikai. anek karam. You cannot break the cycle of the ego, no matter countless rituals and deeds, religious rites are performed. You can study the Vedas, the scriptures, Veda Padhata, Veda Vakhane, and engage in debates. But without the wisdom of the self, you're losing your honor, you're losing your dignity. Bin har pat gavai. It is only through the enlightener Guru and its wisdom that liberation comes. In conclusion, the Guru says, Jin har manavasya se dar sache sachiara. Sachiara is the fundamental question that Guru Nanak poses at the very outset. Kiv sachiara hoya, kiv kur tutte pal. How shall we live so that we are true to ourselves? How shall we live so that we are truth-oriented? Kiv sachiara, that is the question. Now that question is being answered in a way here. Jin har man vasya se dar sache. Jin har man vasya, in whose consciousness the self comes to abide. In other words, in whose consciousness wisdom comes to abide, who becomes embedded in this wisdom, se dar sache. They are at the threshold. They are living at the door, at the intersection with the Eternal One. Even though they are finite here as in time, they are now touching the Timeless One. They're at the intersection. And arriving at the intersection, the door, dar sache, they're awash in truth, sachiara. They know the truth in a manner of speaking, intuitively. So that is how, through this wisdom, you become a sachiara. Una di soba jug jug hoi, koi na metan hara. Their glory endures age after age. Jug jug hoi, koi na metan hara. It cannot be erased by anyone. So therefore, Nanak tinke sad bale aare. Nanak is forever beholden to such divine lovers. In fact, he's a sacrifice to them. In other words, Nanak is saying, I submit myself to such divine lovers, Jin har rakhya urdara, who have enshrined that wisdom within themselves. Vaheguru Ji ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji ki Fateh.